All right, guys, welcome to your last lesson of the week, lesson 106, two-step equations. So just to let you know, the next lesson is your math test, so make sure you're prepared for that. That would be test 20, and that covers through lesson 105. But I like to give you more time to sort of like mull over the lessons that are part of this test, so that's why we're jumping right into 106 instead of having the test today. So we're going to start on page 553 looking at the mental math. All right, so for letter A, it's 40 times 600. What is 40 times 600? Answer is 24,000. All right, letter B, 429 plus 350. What is 429 plus 350? The answer to that is 779. Letter C, 25% of 200. What is 25% of 200? The answer to that is 50. Letter D, $60 minus $59.45. So what is $60 minus $49.50? Right, the answer to that is simply 55 cents. Letter E, 1.2 times 100. What is 1.2 times 100? All right, the answer is 120. Just a case of moving our decimal. Letter F is 60 times 12. What is 60 times 12? The answer is 720. Letter G, which is greater, 2,000 milliliters or 1 liter? What would be a greater amount of liquid, 2,000 milliliters or 1 liter? The answer is 2,000 milliliters. Okay, because there's only 1,000 milliliters in a liter, so 2,000 milliliters would be much greater. And our calculation. So first I want you to start off by squaring 5. So square 5 minus 1, divide by 4, times 5, plus 2, divide by 4, times 3, plus 1, and then find the square root of that number. So your answer would be 5. All right, great job. So like I said, today we're starting with two-step equations, and I love two-step equations or multi-step equations because really this is when you start getting into algebra. And I know you're thinking you're only in 6th grade. Don't think like that. You guys are smart and you've been doing algebra already. So now you're just going to do a little bit more. So two-step equations is just solving equations with more than one operation. So there's not just addition or just subtraction. There's going to be more than one thing to it. So we're going to look at 2 different ways to solve multi-step equations. So let's look at this example. 3n minus 1 equals 20. So let's think about what this equation means. It means that when 1 is subtracted from 3n, the result is 20. So that tells us that 3n must be 21 because 21 minus 21 minus 1 equals 20. Okay, 3n, remember that means 3 times n. When we have a number right next to a letter, it indicates multiplication. So 3 times n equals 21. So 3 times something equals 21. And we know that 3 times 7 equals 21. So n must equal 7. Okay? So that's one way to look at equations, is sort of just to think about what those equations represent. And then what you need to do with these is also check your equation or check your answer. And that means that you take your answer and you plug it back into the original equation. So instead of 3n, it's going to say 3 times 7 minus 1 equals 20. And we just want to make sure that we're correct. So what is 3 times 7? It's 21. What is 21 minus 1? It is 20. So if when you get to the end of checking your answer, your 2 numbers are equal, then you've done it correctly, and your answer is n equals 7. So with these problems, it will say to solve the equation and then to check your answer. And so that's what you do. You substitute that answer back into the original equation. Okay? Now the next way we're going to look at solving this same exact problem is going to be more algebraic instead of sort of thinking, you're still thinking logically, but you also need to use inverse operations. So if you think of what the word inverse means, it means opposite. So we're going to look at using the opposite operations to solve this problem. And you, like I said, you've been doing this already, so hopefully this looks familiar in just a second. Okay, so we're going to look at the side of the equation with the variable. We'll say that 3 is multiplied by n, and then 1 is subtracted from that product. So what we'll do is we need to, what it's called getting the variable by itself. So first what we need to look at is getting 3 times n by itself. So to get that by itself, we sort of have to get rid of this minus 1. So what you need to think is, what is the opposite operation to subtraction? It's addition. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 1 to each side. Because look here, a minus 1 and a positive 1 would cancel out. Okay? So if we add 1 to each side, then we get 3n by itself. And then what's 20 plus 1? It's 21. Okay? Another way we write these, so I'll rewrite this part of it, is you can add the 1 to the end of the equation. And that's sort of how you'll see it in your book. They add it to the end. So if we were trying to solve this equation as it is, we would say 3n minus 1 plus 1. So minus 1 plus 1 is 0. 20 plus 1 is 21. We end up at this same step. All right, next we want to do the opposite operation of what's happening here. So remember we said that when these numbers and letters are written right next to each other, they indicate multiplication. That means we need to do the opposite of multiplication to solve it. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So what we're going to do is divide by 3, because 3 over 3 equals 1, so that just means 1 times n. And the one thing that you need to know, and this will follow you throughout algebra, throughout the rest of your math education, is that when you're solving equations, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So because we divided by 3 on this side, we must divide by 3 on the other side. All right, so now we have n by itself, and then we have 21 divided by 3. So what is 21 divided by 3? It's 7. Okay, so we came up with the same solution. We just did it more algebraically. We used inverse operations. You might think that the previous way was easier, and maybe it is for you. This way is a little bit more mathematical, I would say, using inverse operations. Okay, and you would do the same thing here. You would check your answer by plugging 7 back into the original equation. So 3 times 7 minus 1, and checking to make sure that equals 20, which we've already done. So we're going to skip that little part of it. Okay, so that's really the whole lesson. But what I'm going to do, because that was so short, is going to work through a couple of your practice set problems with you. So your practice set is on page 554. And we're going to do all of those problems that I will walk you through a couple of them. So let me actually get a fresh page and I'll walk you through some of those problems. So together, let's do letter A, and let's do letter F. Okay, so you guys will do B, C, D, and E. So letter A says 3n plus 1 equals 16. So remember the directions say to solve each equation showing the steps, then check your answer. So what we would do first is, and like I said, you can either think sort of how we did example 1 or use inverse operations like we did in example 2, which is, it's how I prefer it because it's really the same thing, but this is just makes more sense to me. So to get our variable by itself, the first thing we're going to do is subtract 1 from each side, because a plus 1 and a minus 1 would be 0, so that gets rid of it. That means 3n equals, what is 16 minus 1? It's 15. Okay? So now 3n equals 15. To get n by itself, we have to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So we'll divide by 3, and we would find that n equals 5. All right, so that's the solution to letter A, that n equals 5. Now, if you prefer to do the other method, you're like, something plus 1 equals 16. I know that 15 plus 1 equals 16. So you'd say 3n must equal 15. And then for this part, 3 times some number equals 15. I know that 3 times 5 equals 15. All right, that's your other way. And then remember, the second part of this question is to check. So checking involves taking that answer and plugging it into the original equation. So instead of 3n, we're going to say 3 times 5 plus 1. And we want to make sure that equals 16. So what is 3 times 5? It's 15. What is 15 plus 1? That is 16. All right, so that is the correct solution. So that means n equals 5. Okay, letter F says 7a plus 4 equals 25. Okay, so 7a plus 4 equals 25. First, you can ask yourself, I know that some number plus 4 equals 25. Well, I know that 21 plus 4 equals 25. So I'm going to say that that number, that combination, 7a, must equal 21. Then you'll say 7 times some number equals 21. Well, 7 times 3 equals 21. So it must be 3. Okay, that's how you sort of think logically through the question. And then let's use inverse operations as well. Just so you guys know, when you go through and do these, you don't have to do problems both ways. So use one of the ways to solve it, but then you have to check it. Okay? So with inverse operations, what we would do is first, to get 7a by itself, we would subtract, because that's the inverse operation, we would subtract 4 from each side. Okay? Because that would cancel out on that side. What's 25 minus 4? It's 21. Now what we have is 7 times a equals 21. What's the opposite or inverse operation to multiplication? It's division. So we would divide each side by 7, because that would further get a by itself. And then what's 21 divided by 7? It's 3. Okay, so good thing we got the same answer both times. But now what we need to do is plug it into our original equation. All right, so take a and plug it back into the original. So 7a becomes 7 times 3. And we'll just double check that it works out. So 7 times 3 is 21. 21 plus 4 is 25. So that means our solution was correct and that a equals 3. So hopefully that helped going through a couple more problems. So I want you guys to take a few moments to go through the rest of the practice set, and then I will give the answers. All right, so we already found a, that was n equals 5. B is x equals 5. Make sure you double check these. That's the beauty of algebra. You can double check your answer. If you're wrong, that means you know you can go back and work it again. C, y equals 8. Letter D was m equals 6. Letter E, w equals 9. And letter F, as we did together, a equals 3. All right, so let me know either in the comments on this lesson or email me, message me, whatever, if you need help on this section. I'd be happy to help you. And then you can see our homework listed here, starting on page 255. So copy that down. You can always also find your homework in the description box on this video, back in Google Classroom, or on GradeLink, all right? So please let me know if you have any questions and if you need help preparing for your next test. All right, guys, I hope you have a good day.